Okay, hope everyone is ready. And hello, everyone. Welcome to this Informs Committee on Teaching and Learning. And this is our November webinar. Our topic today, Reimagine Learning Outcomes, Assessment and Engagement in Generative AI-Infused Courses. My name is Minghong. I'm from the Johns Hopkins Carey Business School, and I will be the moderator for today's session. We have a distinguished group of panelists today, so let's first invite them to introduce themselves. I think we will go in alphabetical order by last name. So, Kyle, would you like to go first?
Hi, y'all. I'm Kyle McClean. I'm an assistant professor, teaching scholar at Ivey Business School in the management science area group, and excited to be here.
Like to say a little bit about your teaching profile?
Oh, my teaching profile. Yeah, so I mainly teach undergraduate. You can imagine introductory business analytics courses, very large courses, and so a lot of my research focuses on how do you scale assessments that test higher order thinking. Obviously, we all want these individual projects for students, perhaps that would be the best, but sometimes it doesn't scale to hundreds of students. And so I'm very focused on how do you scale higher order thinking skills, assessments that test those to hundreds of students in a reasonable way. So yeah, that's what I'm interested in.
Thank you, Kyle. And next one, Ramit.
Good morning. My name is Ramit Varma. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Breakout Learning. We have a tool that uses AI to moderate and evaluate small group discussions and then aggregate the feedback from those conversations up to the professor. And so we are doing our best to address some of the sort of present issues around AI use in the classroom and how do we elevate human dialogue as a mode of learning.
Thank you, Ramit. And we have Ying.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ying Yang. I'm at School of Business at the University of Washington Bothell campus. From my teaching side, I teach both undergraduate and MBA courses, primarily in marketing, including sales, marketing management, and market intelligence, e-marketing. So for my teaching side, I focus a lot on creating engagement with community, enforce more of experiential learning, and by providing the feedback from peers, from the client, from the instructor, from all different kinds of sources. And I think kind of like associated for my research on motivating Gen Z salespeople, this generation of learners, they like kind of like a motivated feedback. And I'm so glad to join the panel today.
Thank you, thank you. I'm Kyle, Ramit, and Ying for being our panelists today. So now let's get started with today's session. And we will begin with a big picture of education in this generative AI era. Then discuss some maybe new or updated modalities of the assessment. And lastly, I will ask our panelists to share their strategies in teaching with generative AI. I know this is a very hot topic as all of us educators, we have a lot to ask and discuss about the changes. So we will reserve the last 15 to 20 minutes for questions. So for all of our audience, please feel free to park all your questions, during the panel discussion in our Q&A board. And we will reserve all the questions for the Q&A session. Okay, so now let's begin with kind of a system view of education. As we all of us see that with all of the new AI models and innovations. For example, I think everyone read that Google just published Gemini 3, right? Which claims to be the most intelligent model capable of science, math, and engineering, problem solving. So what major changes are shaping our education and teaching today? And for this question, let me first invite Ramit.
Yeah, thank you for that. So, it's interesting. I think when we look at AI and its use in the classroom, what we always think about is what are the ultimate use cases, right? And when I did a talk on innovation a few months ago, and the moment is here where we get to reevaluate a lot of the assumptions that we've had for 50 to 100 years about what we teach and how we can assess. For me and from our company standpoint, we're in a moment where it's less about how do we take these tools and as they advance in their reasoning capabilities and those kinds of things and create bots or agents. I hear bots and agents and assistants like all the time. That's what we're hearing everywhere. But that still only hits a sort of a segment of the population, the students who are already kind of motivated and who are already interested in working in a certain way. For us, the use of these models allows for student peer-led discussions, these conversations to be elevated as the primary learning method. Instead of sending students home to do individual reading assignments followed by multiple choice knowledge checks, we say, why don't we have those students have small group discussions? Let the AI be a moderator, a light moderator. Let the AI be an evaluator of those conversations, and then let that AI, again, feedback to the professor, all of what's happening in aggregate across the classroom. And what it does is it centers student learning, centers the pedagogy on what has been widely accepted in the research as the highest levels of learning, right? There's a model, we're all familiar with passive and active learning, P and A, but the model of ICAP, which is interactive, constructive, active, and passive, interactive learning modalities, they are 10 times as effective as passive learning modalities. I can show you a picture of a biology cell and you can identify which one is the mitochondria. But if I'm actually talking about it, I have to develop a viewpoint, articulate it, and defend it. That's where you get real learning, where you get real retention. And by the way, what's the side benefit? Workforce skills, the ability to converse. When you're talking about, we have a lot of clients in India and in Brazil. They say, oh, wow, my students can practice actually conversating in English. That's a benefit. And they become friends. It becomes a learning journey that you take with your peers and your community. So I think that, for us, this idea of the best way, the use case for this incredibly powerful technology is how do we use it to elevate human experiences more than to replace those human experiences, right? Those bots and those agents in many ways replace professor-student interactions. Okay, well, I don't need to waste the professor's time. I'll just ask the bot. Well, the professor is doing a lot more than just explaining to you why something is a certain way. They're motivating you, they're encouraging you, they're creating an interest in the topic. And so I want to really be focused on using AI to do the work that we shouldn't be doing as teachers so that we can spend more time and energy doing the work we should be doing as teachers.
Great. So you mentioned about the AI moderator. Do you think in the future, maybe for our, say, webinar, right, my role can be replaced by an AI, so AI can supply a lot of interesting questions as well?
It absolutely can. But I wouldn't do that. I actually think, having you as a host, you're charming and you're going to ask the right questions. I mean, to me, there's so much more about the humanity of it. You know what our AI
Mm-hmm.
moderator does? Our AI moderator gives a slight indication when you're talking too much. So it would indicate
Ah.
to me that I'm talking too much. It might give you an indicator that you haven't participated, and we would love to
Mhm.
have you be a participant in this conversation. So the moderation really is very light because even in student discussions, we want them to develop the skills of, hey, that was a great point. Let me build on it. Let me do follow-up questions. And our
Mhm.
oral exam tools do a lot of that. So for an oral assessment, our tools, which are which are just a bot with a student, they do some of that. And that's great for scaling an oral assessment, right? But for the learning experience, I think having that multimodal human interactions is 100% where it's at.
Great, thank you, and I'm really excited about that future. So next, I'd like to invite Ying. Do you have anything to share?
Okay, so I just want to share what I have experienced as a teacher. Like, for example, when I used to teach professional selling in the old days, right? We used to ask students to go to a sales lab, which they have like multi-directional cameras, and they will have to role play. One student role play as the buyer, the other student role play as the buyer. So, sorry, seller and buyer, and they have to have a lot of things to prepare. So right now, think about what if I want them to do the role plays. They can simply just role play with the bot, while the bot has a lot of different kinds of profile cases information to play with. And the feedback they are getting from the bot can be instant And they can get not only a summative feedback, but also formative feedback, which basically means they can get not only a score, but also further detailed explanation, breakdown where you did exactly fantastic, where you can be more empathetic. You can ask a more probing question more appropriately. Maybe you can be an active listener better. Think about the efficiency. In the old days, I have to review all those videos individually, like time consuming. Each video takes like 15 minutes to watch, and then for you to write feedback, at least 15 minutes more. Now you can think about, oh, everything, you can get it instantly. However, my thought about this issue is not really just about appreciate the beauty or the efficiency, but also I have this question about when is the best time to offer this feedback? Based upon my research, this is about motivating Gen Z salespeople on their way of taking the feedback. I discovered that actually the best combination of providing feedback is you should be giving the feedback the score part, how wonderful you did, like you got 98 or 100 out of 100. You should give that part immediately. However, you want to delay the breakdown, the detailed formative feedback later so that the customers, or in our case, learners, they will have more time to consume the information. And then it can motivate them to spend more effort on learning. They will diagnose on the errors more deeply, say, oh, what did I mess up? And then when you give those detailed feedback to them, they will appreciate it more. Anyway, this is just lab experiment finding I want to share with you all. And I would like to hear all your thinking on this.
Thank you. And next, let's invite Kyle. What is your vision here?
Oh, vision. Yeah, so that's a very high level idea. So to me, I'm an optimist, and I think AI enables it lowers the marginal cost of producing content. Like at a very high level across all industries, that's what it does. It lowers the marginal cost. I think in education, what that means is that it's going to enable individual learning experiences via curriculum easier. Again, why? Well, because it reduces the marginal cost. If you think historically, historically there's very high marginal cost to producing curriculum, to producing, let's say, a textbook. So what would happen is you'd have a couple faculty members produce a very well-known textbook, and it'd be spread across thousands of students. And this made sense. Again, it's very expensive, both cost-wise as well as time-wise, to produce a textbook. And so, there'd be a couple of main textbooks spread about thousands of students. Now, it really is possible to create individual curriculum for each course. And so it's possible to have individual curriculum elements developed at substantially lower cost. And I think that's a huge benefit. I mean, you can think about electives now being possible that were not possible before because there's so much setup. Now you really can create individual course level curriculum, but also literally personalized student level curriculum. And I think we're just starting to experiment with that. But you can imagine, to me, I always go back to what is AI doing? It's reducing the marginal cost of content production. And what does that do in the classroom? Well, a lot of classroom is utilizing different forms of content. That content can be feedback, Ying, to your point. It can be videos, it can be kind of textbook materials. But when the marginal cost is reduced, how can we use the same time and the same cost to make it better for students? And to me, oftentimes that means more personalized. Possibly there's opportunities here to personalize it to their level of existing knowledge. So I teach introductory courses, and the students, there's no prerequisite. So some of them come in with calculus knowledge, some of them don't. And perhaps in the future, I haven't done this, but perhaps there's an opportunity there to really produce individual curriculum items depending on students' background. And that will be easier and easier to scale. So to me, it's just reducing the marginal cost of content.
Okay, so I hear several times about the scalability. So definitely we will go back to that question later in our session today. But just to summarize, I hear a lot of talk about, say, our system assumption is changing, right? Basically, it's about what we can do or what we can offer in the teaching and education. And another thing about the lower the cost for curriculum development. So this gives me another question. I really want to hear from your kind of insights. Like, let's think about, okay, what education will look like in the next 3 to 4 years. So maybe each of you can briefly share your vision. So for me, for example, in the future, I want to really see an AI version of my moderating these webinars. So what do you think? Let's maybe start with Kyle. Okay,
Oh,
first.
geez. So what do I think AI is you said what is education going to look
Look
like in the next
like,
4 years?
yeah. Ideal
I think it's
education.
more. I like this idea of role play. I think there is going to be an opportunity for students to have this individualized experience. I'll share something that I've been working on. So one of the things that I've been working on is I teach cases a lot. Ivey Business School, we're known for cases. We publish cases. Historically, those cases, they've been high setup costs and they've been fixed. Like you buy a case, you use the case, students have data in the case. But of course, that's not realistic to how actual analytics works. And in a workplace, if you go in and you want to run a project, you have to ask questions. They don't just give you a 2-page, 5-page document and give you, here's all the data we have. You don't know what data is available. And so one thing that I've made here is what is this? Just this little case experience. So I call it a dynamic case experience. And this dynamic case experience, students read a case overview. It's very, very short, and that's intentional because what they learn when they read this case experience, they're working for a foundation, a nonprofit foundation. What they learn is that they're given access to a quote unquote an intern, and this intern can answer questions for them. So rather than giving them all the information, they have to realize what questions to ask. And so, I might this is just me doing a demo, but I might say, I see some spikes in donations. Was anything unusual? And they say, well, there were 2 major emergencies. And really, really important in this kind of example, the student can ask for data. And so you see how we've gamified this user interface where they start with a certain amount of data, but if they ask intelligent questions, they can get other data. And so then on the screen, they start off with only some data, but they can run analysis based on data they're obtaining. So we call this a dynamic case experience because it depends on what the student is doing. So I think what we're going to see is more and more, you can call it whatever you want, simulations or role plays, whatever you want, but more and more individualized where you're taking them through a journey that would not be possible without AI.
Thank you so much. And I know Ying, you also have some, interesting field experiment that you can share with us. Ying, would you like to go next?
Oh, field experiment or lab experiment?
Lab experiment, or like a field experiment. Yeah, both. Or
Okay.
either one. Yeah.
Anyways, I definitely agree what Kyle was showing. That's kind of like what I would imagine for the future of education as well. So I think from my perspective, I think the most important thing or the most challenging part as a professor here is really the motivation. As you know, a professor starting a quarter or semester, you can see that on the first day of the class, right? Students' motivation is really, really high. But definitely you can see it's kind of like climbing, and then declining, right? And then it's so hard you want to keep it up. So I think the future of education is going to be highly personalized, customized, so that every single student, they don't really feel left behind or I need this, but I don't know where to start. They can get the appropriate amount of support at the right time immediately without being like feeling I'm lost. I don't know where to catch up. And I think another part that I want to point out is I hope the future education can provide something that the professor cannot really help because we have to manage a class of 40, for example, for me, for my case. But for Kyle, your group, like I remember we discussed, you have a large classroom, right? So for large lecture classes for many schools, how can we expect every single student sitting in the auditorium room, like 300 or 500? How can you get that kind of support for introductory courses? I think the future of the education should be able to provide customized, exactly diagnosed at almost like real time, anytime in their learning journey for any courses. And that's extremely important. I think, if we think about our experience, let's say we want to learn tennis. You can definitely practice drills according to the video, but the video cannot really give you the feedback, right? So you can imagine you go find a personal trainer, tell you this is like a virtual AI teacher can find record yourself while you're swimming, while you're practicing your tennis, and they can identify, pause, take a pause right there. You should do this differently. Or for my case, teaching sales, it can be right there. Your facial expression can show differently, or you should ask a question in a different tone with a different gesture, like millisecond or every second. You can get that kind of feedback. I think that's kind of something that I would expect. And then speaking of the field experiment, and currently it's not really conducted yet, but we are trying to collaborating with some smaller size sales companies and trying to decide like when to offer, like what I discussed earlier, when to offer the feedback, and then what kind of feedback. Is it from the AI? Is it from the peer? Or is it a combination? And we want to manipulate like who provided feedback, the human version, the AI version versus the instructor versus the peer. So there's a lot of things can be done. And also speaking of the motivation, many things can be varied, like the rewards. The rewards can be monetary, can be non-monetary. The competition can be group competition, can be individuals, and then the prizes can be how many winners should we award prizes? Like should be one single winner has the largest prize, or should we award multiple winners? So all the things that we are trying to motivate our salespeople can be applied to learning as well. Like Kyle mentioned, I think gamification is definitely the way to go. Like the platform that I was using with Critic is called KRITIK. The students enjoy it most because they don't feel like, oh, this is another assignment coming from the professor. I just want to get better because I want to be like, they have like a badges. It's kind of like their gaming word. I want to be a better person because I'm more powerful, greater. So if you reward your students by incentivizing them, okay, you can be a better evaluator if you get more stars. And that's not really that hard as long as you really deeply think about the content, really being able to demonstrate your capability to evaluate the assessment as a professor. The more closer you are to the professor standards, the more stars you were earning. So I felt that students feel motivated about this kind of assignments.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Ying. And Ramit, I know you are like an expert, right, in educational tools. So what is your, vision for a future or ideal like education?
Yeah, thanks for that. It's funny. I agree in some ways with I think both Kyle and Ying, and in other ways I have some differences. Right,
Mhm.
we're in a unique and a fortunate position. In my seat as a breakout learning, and we're in about 500 universities around the world. So I have the opportunity to go visit in classrooms around the world of different sizes with different quality levels, frankly, of the instructor, different engagement levels of instructors. And you see a really wide variety of classroom experiences for the students, like a very, very wide variety of classroom experiences. And some of the commonalities that I see is that, you know, first I'll separate two things. One, sort of skills-based learning from what's more traditional academic learning, right? And that gets to this idea of motivation that Ying was talking about, and that, I think somebody in one of the chats mentioned, if there's a skill that you need to learn to perform a job or to do something. Sales is a perfect example of that. We do a lot of work with sales teams. Then the motivation piece is kind of already there. The students they know that they need to learn this. They're individually motivated to learn it, and they're going to sort of be able to use those personalized, individualized experiences because once I'm there, the most efficient way for me to build those skills is what I'm really looking for as an individual. But if you look at it across, the range of students, across the bell curve of engagement and motivation experiences, particularly in medium and large classes, particularly with instructors who may not be the most dynamic instructors, you're going to find the top 5 or 10% of students who are pretty engaged and are doing all the work and they've done the reading and they're showing up to class prepared. You got your middle of the bell curve, and then you've got sort of the bottom of the bell curve. No matter what you do, you're going to have a hard time reaching those students. You're kind of like, why are you even enrolled in this university? Because of the way that you're approaching this. Our focus has always been on the middle part of the bell curve. And to them, the motivating factor tends to be social. Okay. And that's not like, brilliant insight, right? Like social media is really big because it's social. We've learned as a species through small group discussions since we were sitting around campfires, since Jesus and his disciples, since Socrates. The modern news formats are, for the most part, all small group discussions by proxy. Okay. ESPN is small groups, The View, Fox and Friends. Okay. They're all, for the most part, small group discussions. There is format for individual, a single host, but usually they have guests, right? So it's always small groups. Look at the format we're in right now. It's a small group discussion, right? And this is a moderator-led discussion, so it's a sequenced one. It's not a like I'm not asking Ying questions and follow-ups and Kyle asking me, but that is the most natural, engaging learning format. So but that said, it's a big pedagogical step for people to take. Okay, and we're seeing that. We're seeing that professors get it and they kind of intellectually get it, but viscerally, most professors were in that top 5% or 10% of students, right? By definition. And so because they were those types of learners, our teaching methods are currently biased towards those types of learners. Okay. And that's like if you take that and step back for a second and say, wait a minute, wow, that's like a really fundamental thing for us to all really examine. That because almost universally, a person who's gone through years of graduate school and a PhD program is the kind of person who learns and is able to learn through reading materials and through individual study. And they're like, just give it to me as quickly and as efficiently as you can get it. That's why we end up, that is why we end up building learning experiences that are geared towards those kinds of students, and they miss the big bulk in the middle. And so I think that I'm beginning to see, and what I'd really like to see is that the out of class experiences allow for this level of, small group activity engagement. Five is the number, right? If you have 10 students in a group, it's easy to hang back. You wouldn't be expected to really meaningfully participate. In a 1 hour discussion, a balanced discussion, you get 6 minutes of airtime in a group of 10. Okay. That's not enough to be particularly responsible for your contribution to the group. If you're at 4 or 5 students, it's really weird when you sit there. And students see that, right? And so what we try to do is we try to activate the sort of fundamental human behaviors, those psychological behaviors that like I'm in a group, somebody said something, I disagreed with them. I'm not going to let them get away with that. Like, why would you say that? That didn't make sense. I think we should this. And when you see it that way, it then changes the type of pedagogical experiences that you need to put them in, right? And that's to Kyle's point. The cost of developing those experiences is going very, very, very low. Okay. So you might say, okay, I'm teaching a class on marketing and it's social media. One of the most famous cases in marketing has to do with the Harley Davidson motorcycle rally out of Sturgis. Okay, it's one of the most best-selling HBS cases, and it's talking about using community to build brand. Okay, that case was written in 1999 before social media existed. So one of the most popular cases on using community to build brand was written prior to the advent of social media. Think about that, right? And why is that? It is because it's hard to build really high quality content. But you could say, oh, how does SoulCycle use community to build brand? That's a really good one. Okay. And you can build a case or a scenario that your students could engage with. I love what Kyle showed that short intro. Like just give them enough to be dangerous in the conversation and let the conversation be where they start really pushing each other and driving and building. And that's what I see as the future of education. And I don't think it's 3 to 5 years because I think it's going to take some time to cycle through and get people really comfortable with it. But the forward-thinking professors are saying, wow, okay, I can do this. My students, instead of going and individually reading or not reading, individually writing an essay or not writing the essay, are going to go and have a conversation with their peers. I'm going to know what they talked about. They're going to show up to class ready to rock. I did a guest lecture at UC Santa Barbara yesterday in a master's of technology management class. There were 100 students in that class. I've got one here. I'm at UCLA Anderson right now. I'm going to go teach in about as soon as I get off this webinar, in fact. And in each of those classes, you can look and talk to the professor about what it was like when they gave the old style assignments and when they give breakout learning assignments. And it's a night and day because you have those students who wouldn't have participated in the past, people who have culture or gender biases against speaking up in a large classroom. They raise their hand. Why? Because they've had a chance to try out their ideas. They know they're not going to say something stupid. They're, more confident to raise their hand in class. And that radically changes the classroom experience. And that radically changes the calculation for these students of whether or not higher ed is worth it. Okay. When I went to college 30 years ago, okay, University of Maryland was $1,500 a semester, $1,589 a semester. Okay. College is, 40, 50, $60,000 a year now. Anderson was $12,000 a year when I went here. It's $70,000 a year now. So I was giving up a $55,000 a year job to spend 12, okay, and then I'll come out and make 100. Now I give up a $90,000 job to spend 70 grand a year so I can make 100. The math doesn't math, right? And so I think that like we're in a moment where we need to really take the opportunity to rethink these things. And by the way, it's a way more engaging experience for the professor to ask a question and have a bunch of students raise their hand than to be like you're pulling teeth. And so anyhow, that's where I see that's what I see this looking like. But I would say probably more like 5 to 7 years than 3 to 5.
Great, thank you so much. And I think I hear a few keywords here like personalization, customization, and definitely like it's an opportunity, right? Because of the lowered cost, it's an opportunity for all of the students, not to only kind of a group of or subset of the students. So I know that all of you come to us today bringing your like magic tool, your educational tool. So I really would like to invite you to share a little bit more about your experience with your magic tool. And especially let's focus on these few things that you mentioned: customization, personalization, like inclusion, right? We try to like accommodate all of the type of learning and the students. And also let's revisit that top concern, scalability. Okay, so for this section, I would like to invite Ying. Could you please go first? You are muted.
Do you want me to share the screen?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. So sorry, I have to. Maybe you can ask another speaker while I try to get the right screen.
Okay, Kyle, would you
Okay,
like to
sorry.
maybe go first?
Sure, I already showed HopeWorks a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just do another one just for fun. Yeah, but HopeWorks, the whole idea was a dynamic case conversation. What I will show on HopeWorks, well, actually, no, I'll go back. But I will say on the admin side of HopeWorks, what we do is we can see which data each student has access to. And so again, usually in a case, you provide the data to all the students. They all see the same thing. In HopeWorks, what's really interesting is people come into class, and as the conversation is going on, what we'll realize is students got different facts. Is they'll say, "Oh, wait, I asked about this and I realized this," and somebody else say, "Oh, I never had that conversation." Like they come in with different background information because they had different quality of questions. And I think that's what we're trying to in my course we're trying to push is. It depends on the quality of question. The answers you get are only as good as the questions you ask, and HopeWorks is really an example of that. One just little quick, I'm not sure, it's certainly not a magic tool, but one little quick thing I did want to show is what I sometimes try to do, well, what we all hopefully try to do is make links between what we teach and current events, right? I think the students are always interested in what's going on in the news, and the more that you can say, hey, here's how this links to news. But this historically was a lot of work for me because every day I'd read the newspaper, try to figure out what to do. And so what I did was I created two, I guess you could call them agents, but it's really just a prompt. But essentially an LLM agent that goes out and finds a top like headline news article. And then what it does is it links it to my course. So it knows what my course teaches about, and it links it to the course. So I'll show you what this looks like in practice. So in practice, I have this is just a website, but it's a website that goes out, finds a headline, summarizes what this news article is about, and then it links it with something in the course. So it says analytics, because it's an analytics course. So it says analytics insight. It says, oh, it lines up with regression because we teach regression. So, okay, here, you might look for a pattern, and it kind of discusses this a little bit. Because this is a website, what I do on my LMS, the learning management system, is I make this the homepage, like a part of the homepage of my course. So this is the homepage of my course at Ivey. We have the grading scheme, but I just have a little current news. This is an iframe, and then it links to my website. And that way, whenever the students go to the homepage of my course, it automatically makes it relevant to them. And this is not just for students, but also for me. So sometimes if I have 10 minutes at the end of class, sometimes I end a little bit early, but let's say I have 10 minutes at the end of class and I don't have an activity. This is a pre-made activity. I don't have to check it at all. It's already there. So I sometimes say, hey, let's just look at the news for today, see if we can link something to the course in the news. A couple days back, it was amazing. We just started optimization, and I didn't prompt it, but it had chosen that Warren Buffett had sold Apple and bought what did it bought? Google, I believe. Warren Buffett, the Berkshire Hathaway bought Google. And it said, oh, this is kind of like an optimization problem with a certain amount of budget, a portfolio, and how do you buy this? And it linked perfectly with what we were talking about. But I hadn't needed to do any kind of background research. I just read it, and we just kind of quickly discussed how this might relate to the framework. And again, so in terms of the marginal cost, this now just runs every day for me. I don't really think about it, but hopefully it marginally helps the student understand the link here. And if you're curious, it's literally, I think 3 pennies a day is how much it costs me. It's very, very cheap to run these things. But I hope it makes the student experience a little bit more relevant. So I would not say this is personal necessarily or personalized, but it does hopefully make the relevance of the course a little bit more obvious. So this is, again, it's not a magic tool, but I think it's a marginal improvement in the course compared to if it wasn't there.
Thank you. And Ying, do you want to
Yes.
share with us? Yeah,
Sure.
go ahead, please.
So I want to show maybe 2 examples. I'm trying to find the 3rd example. It's not there. Okay, so this is the platform. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, so this is a platform that I have used for a few years already. It's called Critic, Kritik. They are primarily providing like peer feedback assessment. So as you know, all of the assignments that we put on your learning system, like on Canvas, is kind of like just one submission, and you will count on the students really take your feedback seriously. Like Ramit was mentioning, social is really big thing. When you are really putting them as a group competition, and they really want to win respect from their peers. So they feel like motivated to really get a higher score by recognition coming from this instructor. So when I do these critic assignments, I will ask them to just submit their usual assignments in the critic stage, in the create stage. But after that, I will also ask them to evaluate. So, so this is my course in the winter. This is the really engagement with the clients, community partners. So the clients, I will be invite them as the collaborator. So as you can see here, these are my collaborators. So they will be able to see students' assignments all the way through the quarter. And I will put them into different stages. Like they need to do SEO keywords research, and they will have to not only submit the activity according to our learning objective, instructions like that, but instead of just, okay, as soon as I submit it, I'm done. Instead of that, I will ask them really challenging themselves by, what if you are the evaluator? You have to be like me. You are going to evaluate your other classmates' work by looking at each of the rubrics, by giving them different levels. And then the clients and me can spotlight the outstanding work, saying, okay, this is something they have done wonderfully. What special things they have done, and then each of the group, they will get a score, like creation score and their evaluation score. You can be a good evaluator. Maybe your group's work for the creation piece may not be correct, but you can have higher evaluator score. And then the student have to, I think this group didn't finish the feedback on feedback. Once you receive the peer evaluations, let's see this student. they have evaluation score like this, and they will receive peer evaluation from anonymous feedback. So from me, I can see this Eileen, this student, is a creator, get 3 peer feedback. And each of the feedback, they need to give the scores and also the reasonings like that. And at the end of the day, you can see how wonderful this person is. So this is what I mean, like grading power, right? So the more stars they are collecting, that means they are a better evaluator. As you know, our Bloom's taxonomy, learning taxonomy, the higher on the top is you are able to teach, you are able to evaluate. So that's really a good way to cultivate their higher order thinking, like critical thinking skills. And then on the final stage, they need to provide a feedback on their on the evaluation they are getting, on how motivational they think it is, how critical it is. Sometimes students don't really like harsh critical feedback. However, they really like the motivational feedback. It is if it is very encouraging like that. So similarly, like that is quite anonymously. So I think this is just like a one way to show how peer feedback can be scaled up. And also a cool thing about this, I think they are innovating every year. So like I know now you can ask Critic 360 to create a course with AI or create a lot of different activities. Let's say you have a new course to prepare. You are thinking about how you can create these assignments. They can help you with that. I personally have not used their feature on AI. They have a visible AI feature. It's not really integrated in this platform yet. But as far as I know, they also have this visible AI, which helps you to track this assignment, individual assignment that students turn in, what part is coming from original content from the students, and what prompt the students have used to create a better assignments, basically a percentage of authenticity, original content. And I think that's very cool as an instructor. Another tool that I want to show, it's not really there yet, but I think I want to show the output from that AI feedback that I got. So this is a course that I taught on sales, on negotiation. So in the old days, I will ask them to record the role play on negotiation. Students will role play as a customer and a buyer. But in this way, I have asked them to enter onto that platform. Every single of them will go into the same profile information that I gave to them. So basically, they negotiated with the bot, but the bot may speak differently to different people depending on what they asked, right? So this is the feedback that I asked students to turn in. They will give them very detailed summary of feedback, the debrief session, what has been utilized, what has not been utilized. So these are the critical content that we would like them to master by the negotiation session. And they will give the very like different stars like that. So different students they have. You can see some of them, they did a wonderful job on different things. The format is not very good, but I really like that because it's kind of like within 15 minutes, they already have very individualized feedback. However, I want to add something. I don't want the student feel like the feedback I get is instantly. So they really appreciate it. And from my experience, it's not really like that. It's really important that you, at least from my perspective, it's really important for the students to really go through this kind of debriefing session with you again. And that's really super helpful to them. Otherwise, something that they get so easily, they don't really appreciate it. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ying. I'd like to try those tools as well. And Ramit, I think you have something also to share with us here.
Yeah, so I think from a tool standpoint, I think again this idea that students can talk to each other is really critical and it's really core, right? So I'm going to show you what the output of some of our tools look like. So when a student, let's see if I do the slideshow, does that work? So at the end of an actual session, so this is a conversation. The conversation looks a lot like a Google Meet. okay, or like a Zoom session. So you have the conversation with your video, totally natural, okay, and it tells you how balanced it was. These little bubbles on the left, we give students and I'll show you what this looks like. On using Bloom's taxonomy, their comments are based are given credence against a rubric. So ahead of time, before you have the conversation, you may say, "My students, I want to make sure that they understood what product market fit means and they used it appropriately in the conversation." If a particular student did that, the comment that they made that was marked as, creative or evaluative or, analytical on Bloom's taxonomy gets a bubble of the appropriate size. So here the larger bubbles is sort of higher level comments, smaller bubbles are, lower level of understanding comments. And this is what we do. The individual, did they meaningfully contribute? Did they leave room for others to speak? And did they understand and apply the relevant concepts? And so the teeing up of these conversations actually is, again, back to, I think, Kyle's point, like teeing up these conversations requires you to create a prompt that doesn't have a yes, no answer. Okay. And that's another like big gap between current pedagogy and where I think we're going in the future. Right now, in order for me to evaluate somebody, I say, okay, I'm going to give you 10 questions. You got 8 of them correct. You got an 80%. I'm going to give you a B. Okay. What we do is we don't ask questions that have correct or incorrect answers. Our prompts ask questions that are complex. Should Walmart pursue a domestic strategy or an international strategy given the current information at hand? And the students have to develop a point of view, articulate it, and then defend it in the context of their peers. And through that, the comments that they make we evaluate whether or not they understood product market fit, whether they understood international partnerships through the comments they're making as they defend and as they articulate their point of view. And so what it's doing is it's taking a pretty high level TA basically and putting it in every classroom or in every small group discussion. This is, we then take, and this you can kind of see, did they commit to a perspective? Did they justify it with evidence? Did they demonstrate critical thinking? Did they engage constructively with their peers? These are all things that we can evaluate using transcript analysis. Okay. So we take the transcript, we take grading rubrics, and then we do some transformations so you get high fidelity output from the LLMs. As you all know, LLMs can create sort of jittery or unpredictable outputs. So you have to transform the data. But the way we actually approach the problem is the tighter the lens with which you're asking the LLM to answer a problem, the better your outputs are. Okay, so if you have a generic note taker and that note taker is going into a conversation that it doesn't know what you guys are going to be talking about, it will do a fairly okay job of generically, doing some note taking. But it'll miss things, it'll miss important things, it'll miss specific comments that a person made. If you tell that LLM you're going to be going into a conversation about this, and these are the things to look for, it's actually really good at doing that. And so that's how we solve that problem. And then we also do what Ying was talking about. Every student has the opportunity to give feedback on their peers. And so we use that to have a sort of a gut check on the LLM. Okay. We also use it as a gut check on integrity. And so we ask the students, did you feel like one of your peers was, looking at their phone off camera and getting prompted by LLM or prompted by Google? And so the fact that they know that that kind of thing is happening creates some social disincentive to cheating. It creates a social incentive towards academic integrity. So what we're really looking to do, and by the way, you'll note all this happens at the end of the conversation. We're just putting pieces in place and structures in place so that we are incentivizing the natural behavior that they want to engage in, which is talking to their friends about a topic that they find interesting. And that I think is where it goes. Professors do get a summary report. Okay, this was on a case about the Girl Scouts. Francesca indicated that Girl Scouts could potentially benefit from some kind of funding and resources from the regional chapter rather than relying solely on individual troops and adult volunteers. So this is just literally a comment that this girl made in the actual classroom. And so that's the thing to highlight is that, like, just imagine that when you go in to teach a class, you would know that all of your students had discussed this topic. They can ask you questions directly. You would get an aggregation of all the questions that they were interested in learning more about. Okay. And it just completely changes, radically changes the engagement level in the classroom. And that's I think what the purpose of everything we're doing should be right now is to how do you increase the engagement level in the classroom? Like we believe, one of our mottos here at Breakout Learning is education is about inspiration. It is not about explanation. Okay. You ask any 80-year-old person who their most inspiring teacher was, and they'll give you vivid recollections of a 11th grade science teacher, of a journalism, person who worked with them on the student newspaper that caused them to go into journalism. Okay. Teachers inspire. Okay. That's what we do. This idea of the delivery of the content as the purpose of teaching, in my mind, is off by 90 degrees. Okay. It's an important element. We need to deliver content, but the purpose is to get them excited and engaged and feeling like they're active with the actual material. And I have not seen a better way to do that than these discussions. My background prior to this was in the tutoring world. So I had a business. We did one-on-one small group tutoring for standardized test preps, SATs and ACTs. I now sit on the board of the ACT, so I've got a deep history in assessments, okay, and assessment technology. And the fact of the matter is, when you look at learning and assessment, right now it's bifurcated. The learning and the assessment are different, right? We think of them as I'm going to teach them something and then I'm going to assess. But the holy grail is that the assessment's happening during the instruction, that the instruction isn't necessarily top down, some genius on high comes and pours all this knowledge out of my brilliant brain into your unformed brains, right? The model should be, how do I spark interest, excitement, engagement broadly? And then I can tell by observing that how well these students actually understand. So you meld assessment, instruction, community, it all should be one thing. And when you do it that way, you don't find students rebelling against one more thing to do and one more essay to write and why do I have to do this and this doesn't make any sense. You don't find that because they're doing a pleasurable activity and then there is no write up afterwards. There is no follow up. There's just you talk and you're done. And so that's where I think we're going to see some real continued advancements. I'll stop the share there.
Thank you so much. Although I have a lot of questions I want to ask our panelists, I really want to open the floor for our audience because I've already seen a few questions in our Q&A panel. So I'm going to supply the question. So first question here, okay, how are different styles of conversation, for example, the different cultural commitments handled in these generative AI assess the peer conversations? I guess this is a question to all of us, and especially to Ramit, or yeah. So any of you would like to go first? How are different cultures? Yeah, can handle it.
You say, what was one more question? Just repeat the question real quick for me. It was
Yeah, how are different styles of conversation, especially thinking about the cultural difference?
yeah.
How
No,
can these be handled in the peer assessed, conversations?
yeah, this is a really interesting one because we get questions about accents a lot. Okay, so we have a lot of international students, we have a lot of accents. So what we do is we use a real-time transcript. And here's something really kind of funny. Real-time transcription is not perfect. Okay, it's in the low 90s in terms of its perfection. Okay,
Sure.
but because we use real-time transcription and then we run it through the LLM, it gets contextual cues. And so the understanding of what's said, even though the transcription isn't perfect, ends up being basically corrected when it comes through the LLM. Okay. And so what we have found is that students who have accents, the LLM is actually better at assessing what they're talking about because it's taking all their contextual cues. It's as good or better than their peers are in understanding somebody with a potentially heavy accent. The real-time transcription also is showing as the students are talking. And so for students who aren't as fluent with the language, they're able to see the transcription of their peers. And so they're getting a second sort of almost like subtitles to kind of make sure that they can stay up and into the conversation. So those kinds of cultural sort of differences are corrected for in the LLM. I didn't realize it would do this, but the LLM, without directing it, speaks many, many languages. Okay. So we had a group of students it was in Europe. And so it was a European class. The students were Chinese I forgot where it was. I think it was in Norway. And the instruction was in English. And the students started in English. They then converted into their native Mandarin for parts of the conversation. They returned to English. It was kind of like a back and forth. And the LLM understood it and was able to do the evaluation and return the outputs in English. And that's where, the LLMs, all of them, are quite good with this sort of conversational work, right? You don't need to be able to do all this like super high-end physics and reasoning and whatnot if you can get really good at the conversational piece. And that's the layer that we're really, focused on, frankly. And that's why I think that these tools are ready for prime time because it corrects for any of these variances culturally.
Awesome. It's interesting to learn that the language models are good at, breaking not only the language barrier, but also the cultural barrier. And I think the next question can be handled by Kyle and Ying. So the question is from Tony. I agree that providing students with a personalized experience is a valuable perspective of generative AI. But how do we ensure they're using it for learning rather than having it do the learning for them? So Kyle, would you like to go first?
I think it's like anything else. I think anything you develop, it's fine. A colleague and I developed a type of assessment a couple of years back, and it wasn't with AI, but we kind of had this similar idea, which is any type of assessment, any type of experience, in some sense, depends on the details. You can create an assessment or an experience or a content piece, and it can be quote unquote bad and not useful for learning, or it can be useful for learning. So I don't think AI changes that really at all. You can use AI and it can be not useful for learning. You can use AI, it can be useful for learning. I think it just goes back to being very clear with what your learning outcomes are. And it's a little bit contextual, but like, how is your experience leading to those learning outcomes? Because yes, AI, if you use it without thinking, it won't help you. It's not a magic. It's nothing magic. So I think it's like anything else, which is some textbooks might be worse than others. Some AI applications might be worse than others. I don't think I don't think it's a new challenge. I think it's kind of a challenge that has always been there. But that's my opinion.
Agree. So, what is your strategy to guarantee
I
the
agree
quality of
with
learning?
Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely agree with Kyle. I think my strategy is be transparent. It's okay. So for my class, I definitely have a contract. Okay, so we can use AI, but you need to tell me, and I have ways to track where you did it, right? Versus not. If they are just using it to fake the learning, I can tell. If you let a student know, maybe at the beginning of the quarter, you just let students know through some mini assignments, and they will be afraid of using that. So being transparent, like my marketing management class, I asked students create creative ads for a brand that they like. They can use AI to generate video, audio, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think my learning assessment focus is not really about how wonderful video you created. It's really about the philosophy, the theory. What is the as theory you have utilized to explain this? If you have a foundational, really well-rounded theory and story to tell, maybe your outcome is really very not good. Like the other last quarter, I have students created DoorDash. DoorDash, they have a very creative idea, but they didn't do AI at all. They were just doing it like filming,
Mm-hmm.
role play as the customers like that. But the idea is wonderful, so I still give them very, very high scores. So I think two things: transparency and then learning outcome. You want them to know why they are doing this, what they are doing this for, and students will appreciate that as well.
Great, thank you. And Kyle, I have one more question here in the QA board for you.
Mhm.
Is the dynamic case study tool powered by a reasoning agent or a reasoning model?
It's a reasoning model. Yeah. So it was just GP at that point. I made it 2 months ago, essentially. So it was just GPT-5. So there's so it's an API. So there's GPT-5, there's GPT-5 mini, GPT-5 nano. So it's an OpenAI model. It was GPT-5, yes, with reasoning, but with low effort on the reasoning.
Awesome, thank you. And last question for Ramit. Is similar dynamism in the task assignment possible inside the breakouts you host?
Yeah, absolutely. So we can do that. We actually have a tool inside ours called Sophia that you turn on or you turn off. And so we have a use case with the military, for example, where it is really very focused on, Q&A and, probing whether or not somebody understands, contract language for the Federal Acquisition Regulations. So, within the experience, if you want your students to do that, which I actually really like, and I think we should design to more of them, to Kyle's point, like right now, with case studies, exhibits has always been like kind of a question mark, right? You pack 10 exhibits at the end of the case study. The students don't really look at them. Sometimes they do. What are they supposed to get out of them? But if the idea is you can now pack 30 exhibits in there, because they don't have to read all 30 exhibits, they're just going to ask a question that would query the exhibits and provide some feedback. That's built into the tool. And I think that's an instructional design question that we can that's addressed by the desire of the professor. So I think it's a really good question, and yeah, we do that inside the tool.
Thank you. I know we are running out of time, but we can't reject the questions. So one more question for Ramit. Okay, it seems it's from Brad. It seems like there still needs to be reading or lecturing for the students to have something to say in the discussion. So you cannot replace the delivery of content with conversation. And the conversations are just better ways to connect the content and to allow assessment. Is that correct? Do you agree with that?
Close. So I think that, one of the design decisions that we made as a society 100 years ago was that prose was the appropriate mechanism for delivering basic content. Okay. And so we decided that when I write a chapter for a textbook, it's going to be 30 pages. And I'm going to say, back in history, when George Washington did this, and I'm writing as though I would be talking. Okay. That's a decision relative to saying, okay, I'm going to do it using bullet points. Okay. Like I would in a slide deck for a business presentation. That's a big, big, big difference. So we absolutely, unquestionably need to be able to deliver enough content that those students are able to be active in that discussion. So the question is, how do we deliver that content? Our answer to that question of breakout learning is that we'll take any source content or any, aggregation of source content, and we'll use AI to summarize it we convert the format from prose, which is not what the vast majority of students are connecting with. We convert it into summaries or into bulleted summaries, and those bulleted summaries give you enough information to be a participant and a material participant in the conversation. And that is actually the best way, and that's what students really the students really react to. And so it just ends up being a more efficient way of getting them to that place. And I think this idea of, like, again, it's another one of those insight moments that we ourselves had. The assignment, the reading of that prose 30 pages is something that feels really difficult and painful to students. And a lot of them just won't do it. And now, in the best case scenario, they themselves are using the AI to do those summaries to then end up, coming to the classroom. So we're just shortcutting that and saying, okay, yeah, we accept that you're going to read a bulleted summary of this. Take it, have the conversation before you enter into my classroom.
Thank you, thank you. And it's well for right now. And thanks everyone for joining us today. And a big round of applause to our panelists.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you all.